Hey, welcome back. I'm back. Where have I been? Well, if you're only watching me for camera stuff, I've been gone for a while. But I actually have had some stuff coming up on the channel, but you may not be aware of it or whatever. But anyways, if you're new here, welcome. I'm glad to have you. My name is Malcolm Walker, and this channel covers camera equipment, photography, Sony, stuff of that nature. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's good to see you again. And you may see that we are in a new space in a new room, and that is all happened over the last couple of months. And if you've been living under a rock and you don't know nothing about this, go back, find my build series on this studio space up to this point. It's not done yet, but we're getting there. All right, enough of the boring intro stuff. Let's talk about what you're really here for, and that is, let's discuss the A6600 versus the A6700. Let's do a quick spec comparison and compare these two models. That way you can make an educated decision on which camera may be best for you on your needs. Now I'm gonna have several videos on this camera discussing different topics, so stay tuned for those as they come out. But for right now, let's just get right into it and let's talk sensors and shooting modes, the difference between the two cameras. The A6600 uses the IMX271 sensor. This sensor can also be found in the 6500, the 6400, and maybe the 6300. I couldn't find that written down or in a confirmation anywhere, but I'm pretty certain it's in there. Now the new generation, the A6700, uses the new IMX571 sensor, which can be found in not only the A6700, but also the FX30, which I'm currently filming on. Love that camera. Now the IMX271 came out in the 6400, which was then soon followed by this A6600, and they did do some improvements to the sensor overall. But the biggest difference is megapixels. The A6600 is 24 megapixel, somewhere around there, and the new 6700 is 26 megapixel. One of the next biggest differences is in the shutter. The A6700 has an electronic shutter similar to this one, but what it does allow you to do is shoot at 1/8,000th of a second versus just 1/4,000th of a second in the 6600. Now, one of the areas they did improve in shooting performance was in the buffer. The A6600 buffer can hold about 46 images raw in continuous mode when you're shooting at 11 frames per second. That's not bad. The A6700 bumped it up to about 59 frames in raw. Now the biggest difference is in the JPEG performance, and why there's such a huge gap, I couldn't tell you. But this camera peters out around 116 frames in JPEG, where the A6700 they say is 1,000 frames of JPEG images before the buffer gives out. That is a minute and a half of just full-on clicking the shutter. Just one of the other new big improvements of the A6700 versus the A6600 is autofocus. The 6700 gets the AI enhanced autofocus, which also gives you the ability to, I believe, focus track on more subjects than just animals versus human. I think you get birds, stuff of that nature, where this one just gives you animal eye autofocus and human eye autofocus. It also features many more phase detect autofocus points at 759 versus just 425 for the A6600. Now I say just, 425 is a lot, but I can only imagine having finer control, backed by the AI, you'd see incredible improvements. Another feature they added to the 6700 that this 6600 doesn't have is the ability to shoot in the HEIF format, the HEIF format, the HEF format, I don't know, the HEIF format. So not only can you shoot RAW and JPEG, you can also shoot the inclusion of HEIF. Now, this format says it's better than JPEG with a smaller compression file, but retains better data. I haven't personally used it, but it's another feature the 6700 has that this camera doesn't. My FX30 does also have it. I don't think I've shot a picture with my FX30 though. In addition to not only the HEIF format, they also gave the 6700 lossless RAW. So no longer is it a compressed RAW, it has the option to shoot lossless. And finally, the last big feature I found different between the 6600 and the 6700 is they gave the 6700 focus breathing compensation. Now, in photos, this isn't an issue, but it's definitely a big help when it comes to video shooting. I have had many focusing issues shooting on my A7 III or my A7R II, where you get that hunt or that zooming effect in your image from your focus, where the newer cameras like my FX30 or an A6700 in this matter has that compensation built in, so as it's focusing, it's adjusting the image digitally. You won't see that focus breathing. All right, the next section that I want to talk to you about is body and ergonomics. The big differences here. I think one of the biggest differences between the 6700 and the 6600 in physical body form is in the grip. They made the grip a little larger in the 6700, as well as a little bit wider and thicker chassis in the body. I always like the small form factor of these cameras. Having a bigger grip, this I can tell you on this compared to like a 6400, much better. So another big difference in the bodies between the 6600 and 6700. I don't know why I'm still saying it. I'm gonna just change it to 66 and 67. The 66 has a top flip-up screen. Now, a lot of people complained that it was blocking the hot shoe, which I agree. This is not gonna work. They made a lot of relocating stuff for, changing cages, adapters, all this to move your microphone or whatever accessory you want so you can see yourself while you're vlogging. Now, the problem with that is the new camera, the 6700, also has the digital microphone inputs on the hot shoe. So if you're using any of the new Sony microphones, which you probably should be, it's got a hot shoe point that is digital interface instead of an old traditional analog. So what they did was they gave it the side flip out screen, where the screen would flip out to the side and rotate. Both screens have their advantages and disadvantages. While I personally always really enjoyed the vertical flip screen, because I always liked having the camera screen in the back like this when I'm shooting. I don't like having it out to the side. I find it kind of clumsy, and it's a much more difficult way to hold the camera and shoot from the screen. So I prefer this method versus a side flip out. Okay, another big difference is this record button. I was shooting with this camera just a week ago at the drag strip, and I recorded a beautiful giant wheelie of a drag car going down the track, only to find out I had actually bumped the button again and shut off recording, and I didn't capture it, and that sucked. The record button here has never been a problem for me till that very point of time. I was disappointed I lost the shot. They made this button easier to press on the side of the 6600 versus the previous models. It's almost too easy. But again, they fixed it in the 6700. They've now swapped your C1 button and your record button position. So now your C1's on the side over here, and your record button is dedicated to the original C1 slot on the 6700. So it's a little difference, but a big one. Okay, this one I think everybody complained about when they released this camera right here, is that they still have just those two wheels for your control. You have a wheel up on top for your thumb and your thumb wheel on the back D-pad. Now, in the 6700, you get that front scroll wheel similar to one of the full frame cameras, where you have a wheel here and a wheel here, as well as your wheel in the back of the camera. So that was also added to the 6700. So if that's a thing, if you're coming off a full frame camera, or you're thinking about buying an aps-c camera, definitely consider the 6700 for this reason alone, as your ergonomics and your setup will be very similar to what you're currently using. Now, one of the other big improvements to the 6700 was better weather sealing of the bodies, which is a big deal for us photographers. We like to take our cameras out and shoot stuff in the rain, or maybe we just accidentally get it wet and we want to know it's protected. Either way, this camera isn't as good as a 6700. I haven't personally tested this, nor am I going to. But one thing I've always loved about this camera, as well as the 6400, is this little slide door right here. This little door is so much easier. It's spring loaded. It doesn't make noise like these little rattly things when you have it open, and it just is a much cleaner design. Now, the new camera, the 6700, has a new door design, as well as multiple ports to access, so you don't have to open up one door to expose all your ports. You just open up what you need, essentially. While this still works just fine, your ports are located in front of a screen that flips out. It's not been too big of a problem on my FX30, but it is something you need to consider. Another big improvement of the 6700 versus the 6600 is the SD card slot. This has a regular SD card slot. It's a UHS 1 card, where the 67 got the UHS 2 card. Now, you only really need that higher speed card, which is also more money, by the way, if you're shooting video. We're about to get into that one. And lastly, the last thing about the ports I want to tell you about is that this camera doesn't have a USB-C port. It has a micro USB multi-interface port that Sony uses, as well as a small HDMI port, the HDMI micro. It has a microphone jack and a headphone jack. One of the things that they added to the 6700 was the addition of a USB-C port. And as I mentioned before, you have the digital interface on the hot shoe. So should you want to put one of the new Sony microphones on this camera, you're not going to get the benefit of the digital interface. If you buy a 6700, you'll have that. This last section is the primary reason why the 6700 is a better camera than the 6600, and that's the video features. There was a huge improvement to the video features of the 67 versus the 66. First off, everything's better on the 6700 for video. It's a better hybrid camera for video and photo shooters. It has the addition of 10-bit video is the main key reason you should buy a 6700 versus the 6600. The 6700 is just better all around in everything. It is a phenomenal video camera. It received the 10-bit file formats, unlike the original just 4K 30 frames, 8-bit stuff that this A6600 had. So that's a big improvement. It came with multiple shooting modes, multiple frame rates. You can shoot in the all-ultra codecs, you can shoot at high frame rates in 4K like 60p, 120, might be cropped, but it's still there and available to shoot in 4K. With this camera, the best you can do is 24 and 30 frames in 4K. Another big improvement is in the picture profiles. We no longer have the S-Log2 in the 67, but we did get S-Cinetone. Now S-Cinetone is a great picture format. I really enjoy shooting with it on my FX30. Right now, we're currently shooting in S-Log3 Cine EI, which the 6700 didn't get because this is a cinema camera, and they gave it a little bit extra sauce there. And of course, the last thing is external recording. If you're doing any kind of external recording, another addition is that you get the 4K 60 external, 422 10-bit, a 422 8-bit, up to 4K 30 on the external recording of the 6600. And lastly but not least, the last thing the 6700 does better than the 6600 is the AI auto framing. Now, if you're not familiar with that feature, what it is right now, my frame is fixed. Nothing's going to change with it. Shortly after the release of the FX30, they came out with the 6700 and it got the auto framing feature. What that means is as I can move through the screen, it's cropping in digitally and following my motion to make it look like somebody's actually holding and interacting with the camera rather than just having the camera sitting on a tripod. It's a little extra sauce you can add to your video for no extra work. So with that, I think that about covers all the main differences between these two cameras. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit that like button. It is highly appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when the new videos are coming out. Like I said, I'll have several about the 6600 coming, so check those out. If you want to check out the studio build, make sure you go back and check the studio build out. And Monday nights, 9 p.m. Central, I go live. So if you want to connect with me directly in a chat or even face-to-face, that's possible too. We'll see you there. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.